Welcome to the Federal Tech Podcast, the podcast that connects you to federal technology leaders. My name is John Gilroy, and I will be your moderator. Our guest today is Taylor Johnston, President and Chief Executive Officer for the Institute of Applied Engineering and Executive Director of the Global and National Security Institute at the University of South Florida. But no, we're not in South Florida. We're in lovely downtown Washington, D.C. at the AWS Public Sector Summit, along with, I think, maybe 26,000 of Taylor's closest friends. Huh?
Definitely. It's thrilled to be up here, thrilled to be in Washington, even though we were joking earlier, it's a little bit warmer here than it is in Tampa today.
Yeah. Well, all kinds of topics here. We got a guy from Florida, we got the AWS convention, and we have the federal government. Kind of three things that you wouldn't, maybe if you're reading a novel, you're trying to put these three things together. How do they all combine? Well, I think what we want to talk about is a press release that came out today. And breaking news, ladies and gentlemen, breaking news. It's a secure research environment where the University of Florida is combining with the federal government and AWS to produce something that's just kind of amazing from my perspective. So give us a perspective from a bird on this whole situation, and tell us about a secure research environment you're developing.
Well, the secure research environment enables our professors, our students, and our engineers to work on problems for the operator at a higher classification than unclass. So we start at the controlled unclassified information environment, which would be IL5, that information layer 5, and we're able to start that research on that, keep all of the controls engaged with our professors and our students, and grow that research into the secret and top secret domains. So providing that infrastructure really for our professors to do work for the DoD, work for the DOW, and also work for the DOE, and get that research into the operator's hands as soon as possible.
All the way up to IL6?
All the way up to IL6 and IL7.
Well, there are some people who listen to this podcast who are going to get out of their chairs when they hear that, because that is like winning the gold to the Olympics. That is really, really hard in this town. Very few people can even mention IL6 with their security, because this is a big deal.
It is, and getting professors to work and research at that level, so they're providing context to the problems of today. Too many of the problems of today are at that highly classified nature, and getting that PhD level talent to solve those problems and solve them rapidly so they can get back into the operator's hands.
I was just at a keynote with a guy named David Levy downstairs, and he talked about the DOE and their 17 research labs, and everyone knows the AFRL and all the geniuses there. The problem is you have 17 different groups of geniuses. How can they communicate securely? This is the problem. I mean, if you just solve a problem in the Idaho National Lab and the folks in Florida at the Special Operations Command may benefit from it, how do you share that information?
That's where AWS and our partnership comes in, because that cloud infrastructure is all combined into that one AWS GovCloud that's multi-domain and multi-accessible. So you can work with those other with those other FFRDCs. You can work with those labs. You can also start to work with the multitude of other universities that have some sort of SCIF capability, and it gives you a playing ground to actually work together with the same set of suite of tools that AWS provides.
Simon Sinek, you know him, he says start with why. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to do the why question to you. So why University of South Florida, of all places?
Well, it started off geographically, all right? Tampa is the only place in the world that's home to two combatant commands, Special Operations Command and Central Command, down in Tampa, Florida. MacDill Air Force Base, you've got about 16,000 uniformed and civilian personnel, bringing a $16.6 billion economic impact to the region. We're a stone's throw away from the university, and our partnership with MacDill Air Force Base and the other organizations on MacDill Air Force Base is how we got our start. But after you get that start based on geography, you got to prove your worth. You've got to prove your mettle. And the work that we've done with Special Operations Command, with Central Command, enabled us to get a vehicle with Army Research Labs last year. So we were able to work with DevCom's ARL and progress that research not only just for the special operator, but for the larger soldier out in the field.
We have family friends who, one of them spent 17 years in Special Forces, and I always thought he was bad at geography, because I always say, well, where have you been the last 6 months? He'd say, bunch of places. Where are you going? I don't know. So I never knew. They will never say anything. I mean, just slow conversations, difficult. And so I can see where if you're a university that's associated with the geographic command, like the Special Forces Command, I can see where that have an advantage. But my question to you is, why Amazon?
Why Amazon? We've had partnerships that go across all the three big cloud providers, to be frank. Amazon has really shown the eagerness to provide highly classified cloud compute and cloud capability back to researchers and back to the DoD. So those three organizations kind of working together, and it all comes down to that desire to bring rapid solutions back to the operator. So Amazon has shown a real preference to going at things quickly and making sure that that collaborative space can be there.
I'll refer to the early discussion this morning at the keynote, and Dave Levy said that they have new initiatives they're releasing today. They have millions of dollars that they can provide for grants for research like this. And I hope you're taking advantage of this because there's some dollars involved.
We are. And it starts off with getting the partners from Amazon to help us with that implementation of the new secure research environment. We already had and Dave used the expression earlier about that Lego block building kind of concept, right? We had those basic building blocks of a secure research environment already. And so we were doing already that controlled unclassified work. But how do you scale that? How do you grow that? And I'll take you back to what you mentioned before there with the 17 federal labs, right? There's an established ecosystem right now. How do you become that startup academic research institute, the one that's going to change the game inside of that ecosystem? I'm not saying that the federal lab system is broken. I'm just saying how do you become a brand new entrant into that? How do you create that momentum and invigorate the academic research possibilities back to the operator?
Well, we're at an event here, 26,000 people. There must be 10,000 different little lecture halls here, and everyone's got a different topic. They're talking about architecture. They're talking about quantum. They're talking about so many different things. I can go right down the list, and I'll bore the listeners to tears. They talk about digital engineering, advanced data analytics, high-speed computing, modeling and simulation, a lot of the topics you guys cover. So how do you prioritize what? I mean, what's going to have the most impact, and what should you prioritize now to have that big impact?
General Fenton, when he was in charge of Special Operations Command, was very adamant about the human is the operator is the most important thing back to Special Operations. A lot of our research has been done back to improving the operator, not only with brain health, so looking at subconcussive impacts to the soft operator's brain, human performance, so improving their spine, improving their gait, improving all of those things that helps that soft operator act and perform better, and that translates to the U.S. Army. The other things that we've been starting to work on with Army DevCom ARL, is looking at large language models, AI and machine learning, both in the unclassified data sets, but you'll talk to a lot of people down there, how do they train their models? Right now, they're training models on unclassified data. I'll tell you right now, the classified data has different nuances on there, and you want to be able to train that model. You want to build that model in IL6, in IL7, so it's utilizing those data sets. So that's some of the stuff that we've been doing and some of the stuff that we've been investing in heavily.
If you go to the other side of Florida, there's this thing called the Space Coast, and this little company or agency called NASA. And years ago, they had a problem of trying to solve a problem with a satellite. And so they decided to do these simulations they're called digital twins. And all of a sudden, people started, well, this is a pretty good idea for Earth-based problems. So it seems that a lot of this modeling and simulation, you could do a digital twin and apply some of the restrictions of a classified environment in there, and all of a sudden, then you get the best of both worlds. You have a classified environment and take advantage of some of the newer technology.
It goes exactly, and it even goes back to the Department of Transportation. How you're doing that digital twin, how those cars are moving up and down the highway, how those people are moving in an enemy encampment. How are you doing that visualization? Because that satellite read on that enemy encampment is going to be a classified visual solution, right? So how do you apply that computer vision to that and do the modeling and simulation to see what's going on in a possible enemy AOR?
My previous guest is Patty Titus, and she's giving a talk as we speak. And one of her themes of her talk is AI going to take my job? And we're going to follow her down with a microphone and see what the answer is. But let's say you're in an airport and people find out what you do, and you're obviously involved in a lot of artificial intelligence and leading edge technology. So how do you respond to that question about AI and taking my job away?
I don't think it's really going to, and this is my own personal opinion, I don't think it's going to take jobs. I think productivity has always been an issue as long as we go back, from the industrial age to Ford's, motor cars to the 1980s with the advent of computers. AI is just an enabler. to increase the production and solve some of those menial tasks that used to take us a couple hours to read through, that context shift from brain to brain. It's going to be a productive enabler versus a job taker.
So Taylor, before the interview, I mentioned I was involved in the academic world. I taught at Georgetown for 13 years. A big part of Georgetown University is getting grants and getting money. And they apply for specific types of funds all the time. And I'm sure that University of South Florida does too. But there's, 1,400 institutions in the United States that you're this is a lot harder than the NFL.
It
There's
is.
32 teams. How about 1,400 teams?
Yeah.
So what's your differentiator? I mean, I looked up on Google this morning, and apparently you're one of the leading research organizations, which I would have lost that on Jeopardy. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, we were in the top 25 in patents last year
I
at
saw
the
that.
university. We are also a brand new member of the American Association of Universities, $750 million in research dollars in 2024 and rapidly growing. We started off in 1956, again, that young startup academic institution, but our difference maker really at the Institute of Applied Engineering is that we focus on contracts. So grants, as you know, coming from Georgetown, grants will enable a professor to go out and essentially do what he or she wants to go research. And I think that with the political environment now, that you're seeing contracts become more of a lever that the government likes to pull because, yes, they want to enable that professor to research a specific topic, but they want a deliverable at the end of the day that comes back to the operator in question, not just going after that fundamental research grant. Results-based research is really a priority for the administration right now, and that's been one of our focus areas at University of South Florida.
If you go over the Department of War, just over the river there, you find out that they have this thing called the Defense Industrial Base. 300,000 companies. So can they take advantage of some of this sharing of information, or where do they fit in this whole discussion?
They are, because there's, I like to call it basically four legs of the stool, right? You've got the Department of War and the U.S. government, you've got academia, and you've got the Defense Industrial Base, and then you've also got venture capital. So how is venture capital working with the Defense Industrial Base, working with academia? And another kind of portion of that Defense Industrial Base is the startups. They're kind of in the middle, right, of enabling both academia, the venture capital, and leveraging off of those Defense Industrial Base giant companies. So as those four legs of the stool work together to deliver results back to the operator, we can be partners as a university on a contracts basis, as a subcontractor to those large primes. They're going to need students. They're going to need cleared students. So one of the things that GNSI and IAE have done really well is develop student success. So those students are graduating sometimes with clearances and then going to work right for the DoD or for the Defense Industrial Base, and they have that DoD experience, they have a clearance, and they're much better that first day into the job than 6 months into the job, if that makes any sense. When
it comes to startups, traditionally, what marketing will say is, listen to the customer, see what the customer wants, and solve the problem. And I began this interview with to solve the problem. And so it would seem to me that in an academic world, you would have the ability to understand the problems better than another institution because of your security capabilities. I mean, it's an unfair advantage, Taylor. It's not fair.
And I don't want a fair fight. I really don't. And the other part of that is, too, coming as an academic research institute, we come with that infrastructure that small businesses can leverage. So case in point, if you're trying to get a payload up to launch, right? You said you were working on Space Coast before. You're a young startup that needs to have that payload validation. Where do you go? How much do you pay for getting your payload validated to make sure it's on that next launch? How are you enabling those partnerships? And academia can provide that level of partnership to that small business.
It's always difficult to make predictions, but I'm going to ask a prediction out of you here. You know, I started 10, 15 years ago going to these AWS shows. There's like 50 people here. There was no one here. And this has exploded. I mean, no one believed there'd be 20,000 people. And I think it's a 20th anniversary now since AWS has gone into the federal government, maybe the 15th since this event. But it's hard to predict that. What do you predict is going to happen in the next few years as far as these public-private partnerships, which is what you're doing here? I mean, this is how do you classify? This is more of a creative public-partner relationship that can benefit both parties. There's a lot of creativity here, as I'm getting at. I think I think I'm answering the question. There's got to be creative solutions to these difficult problems. So AI is beating up everyone. You come back with AI. It's a whack-a-mole until you get something creative like this.
And they have to be informed, true, by experts in the field that can provide the policies and guardrails, right? So, yes, we have, a lot of the talk, especially with autonomy and AI, is human in the loop for kinetic actions, right? Do we want an AI or an autonomous vehicle? I'll just say vehicle because it could be airborne, could be on the ground, could be underwater. But do you want them in a kinetic solution? And if they are in a kinetic solution, where does the human come in the loop? Where's that ethical discussion come in? That's where GNSI comes in, brings those experts of talking through the ethics of what we're doing. How do we provide those guardrails and those access points to the increased, the increased technological advantage we now have?
I know some special forces people, they love that word kinetic because finally it's not academic, it's not a piece of paper, it's boots kicking in the door doing something, kinetic, and that's really what the military is all about, is having at least the option or the possibility that it can connect and multiplying it with the knowledge from other organizations with all these research labs that are so powerful. I don't think the United States realizes the brain power in the research labs that the DOE has. I mean, these are the top scientists. They work because they like the work. They're not there for the money. There for the creativity and the experiences. It's really a privilege working with these folks, isn't it?
Yeah, and I mean, DOE has the charge for nuclear weapons, but also, I mean, I came as a former KC-135 pilot. KC-135s are one of the arms of the stool of the nuclear triad, and you're dealing with a plane that was built in 1956. How do you still execute the nuclear mission with a plane built in 1956? That's the fun part of the next couple of years for the Air Force.
Our next interview will be a 1956 design. By the way, they're very, very reliable. We know that, and they do have a role. So we'll have to do the next interview. Well, we're running out of time here, unfortunately, Taylor. You have been listening to the Federal Tech Podcast with John Gilroy. I'd like to thank my guest, President and Chief Executive Officer of the Institute of Applied Engineering, IAE, and Executive Director of the Global and National Security Institute, GNSI, at the University of South Florida, world-famous Taylor Johnston.
Thank you so much for having me.